Hello everyone, welcome back to the Stellium Astrology podcast. I'm Stephanie James and today I'm talking about water signs. I'm talking about the element water. But before I get started, I just wanted to give some shout outs to people who've reviewed the podcast. So just wanted to say thank you so much to Hayley D23 for your wonderful 5-star review. Astrology at its finest. Girl Peril, thank you so much, Girl Peril, for your review. Wonderful stuff. If you're interested in astrology, this is a great podcast for beginners and beyond. I appreciate your 5-star review. Thank you so much. And VB, awesome. Would highly recommend. Thumbs up. 5 stars. Brilliant. Thank you, VB. And what's this one? An interesting and informative, I'm guessing it says podcast. 5 stars. This one's Tingin1. Tingin1, thank you very much. I've been following Stellium Astrology on social media for some time and find Stephanie to be very knowledgeable, so I was delighted to hear there was going to be a podcast. I'm looking forward to being a regular listener and learning more about this fascinating subject. Thank you, Tingin1. I appreciate your lovely, kind words. It's really great that there are people who are excited about this podcast as I am, so let's get going. Today I want to talk about water signs and the elements are kind of like the building blocks of astrology. We really get to the core and the essence of each of the signs through understanding the element that they are in. So on my previous episodes I briefly went over this. Literally draw a circle on a piece of paper, divide the circle into 3 equal parts. So draw an equilateral triangle in the middle, and the points of the triangle will point out the elements that are of the same sign, because each of the elements are 120 degrees apart. So that's the distance between one point to another point on an equilateral triangle. So that kind of distance in astrology is called a trine, and it's considered a harmonious and flowing aspect, and there's a sense of natural ease and aptitude and a compatibility. And essentially with the elements, what we have here is what really motivates or drives us. So that's what the elements really represent. And a good book on this is Astrology, Psychology and the 4 Elements by Stephen Arroyo. Link will be in description. And what we're going for today is understanding the watery realms. So with the elements, it's really about basic ways of perceiving and processing stimuli in our environment. So it's kind of like our impulses and urges and needs. And for water, this is a need to emotionally connect and to decide if something feels right or if it's agreeable. So really, let's get into water and let's think about water and the way that it flows and the way that it affects us. So immediately I'm drawn to my many bath times where I have a little bath bomb fizzing away and I have a little book and I lock myself away in this little room. There's condensation on the walls and I just soak until I'm a prune. I'm sure you needed that image. But anyway, water is essential to life on our planet. Obviously it's wet and it lubricates and it dissolves, it can erode. Think of the land by the sea, the cliffs that just crumble because the water keeps hitting it and hitting it and hitting it, and you have little caves which have over time been carved out through persistent water that just keeps pushing. Like the Needles at the Isle of Wight that I visited many, many moons ago. Water can be liquid form, but it can also be ice. So it has that kind of changing state. It can freeze and it can melt. It can saturate. It can be absorbed. It takes on the form of the receptacle it's poured into, but it can also overflow and it can leak. It can spring a leak. So it's not always watertight. Water signs aren't always watertight. A glass of water can become, the water in the glass can become toxic. If you leave it on the side for a long time, the water can become smelly and stale. I don't know about you, but I use a bottle, and if I leave the lid on the bottle before refilling it and it's empty, you do get that horrible stale damp water smell in it. So you need to give it a good scrub to get rid of that. And the human body, that we have toxins in our body that need to be flushed through drinking lots of water and also making sure that we sweat. Water can be damp. So if you think about damp in a house, if you've got a bit of a damp area, and what can come from that, you can get mould and rising damp. And, another image that I got was being at a Lido, tooting Beck Lido, which I've probably only ever been to once or twice in my life, and being in the water. But this has happened to everybody who's ever gone to a public pool, and there's like a plaster floating there, like comes closer and closer, and you're just like horrified because you're like, oh my God. The problem is when that plaster is floating towards you, you are literally aware of the fact that you're in the water with somebody who needed that plaster, and you're kind of connected by that body of water, you know. And that's the thing about water. That's the example that I wanted to use. Don't know why I chose such a gross one, maybe because I've got a Scorpio moon, a water moon. But yeah, water connects us, and it can drown us. Think about tsunamis. Think about water getting out of control. Think about a storm. Think about, you know, one of my favourite films. I love the Titanic. But I also love The Perfect Storm, which I know is super cheesy. I know it's really rubbish, but I really like it. And I love the fact that it's about the changing state of the ocean and just the unpredictability of the ocean sometimes. And water has that ability. The tsunami that we had in Japan, which triggered that Fukushima, that whole thing. You've got waterfalls, babbling brooks, streams and raindrops, reservoirs, rivers, and, you know, those ravines which often have a little river running through at the bottom. Lakes. Now, the phrase with a lake is still waters run deep, because the water generally sits quite still in a lake, and, you know, the deeper it goes, the more densely it's packed, and you get quite a lot of silt at the bottom of a lake, which often in lakes you've got a lot of pond life. The water's very toxic because it's not water that's constantly flowing. It kind of just sits there. And yeah, you've got streams and lots of different types of water and the ways that water works and the way it runs. And, you know, there's 7 underground rivers in London. Most people, when you say name a river in London, they'll go, oh, the Thames. But there are actually 7 rivers, I think, including the Thames, and I can't remember any of them. But, you know, it's interesting to think that there's so much water running underneath us that we're not even aware of. Even if you're not in London, there's a lot of water underneath us, all over the place. Water can slap you in the face, you can belly flop in water, or you can gracefully pour liquid. Think about people pouring their wine. You know, liquid can come in, you know, a variety of forms, in the sense that, you know, it can be alcohol, you know, it can be, even with paint, you know, you can pour paint, it's a bit thicker, but it's got a very liquid quality about it. There's, you know, water can be a whirlpool, spinning out of control, sucking people in. And water, to an extent, it does actually dissolve boundaries. So if you think about cliffs being eroded away over time, you can dissolve the boundary in that way. Or also water can just literally rise up and flood over, you know, literally like floodgates being opened. So, you know, think about, I'm sure there's so many that I haven't mentioned, but there's so many different ways that water exists and interacts. And water signs generally are feminine. And like I said before, you know, it's not about being male or female. It's not about gender roles or, you know, gender identity. It's more about the kind of receptive and subconscious internalization that feminine energy kind of represents. That kind of yin, that softer and less demonstrative, externally demonstrative anyway, type of energy. And for water signs, they really need to feel, and they need to immerse, and they need to emotionally connect. So the water signs in the zodiac are Cancer, Scorpio, the 18th, Scorpio, the 8th sign, and Pisces, the 12th sign of the zodiac. And Cancer is very much a caring kind of rescuer type, likes to help those in need by knowing exactly what they need when they need it, but not necessarily always going to be somebody who's caring for others. It can be very good at spotting what's needed, being a niche finder. So Cancer can be associated with fashion. Scorpio, the 8th sign of the zodiac, is kind of like, the motto is almost like sharing is caring, where, you know, Scorpio kind of gets into, and we'll get into fixed signs, but Scorpio really is a fixed water sign. So think more about water when it's in its ice form. And that is a kind of freezing of anything that you have with another person, because Scorpio is very other person orientated, and it's about kind of like that entanglement and commitment that you can have with another person. So where you might be in the relationship with them in Libra, Scorpio, the sign that follows on, is making that a like kind of commitment and really kind of bonding you to something. So also with Scorpio, there's this till death do us part type thing, and also this like psychological and deep subconscious exploration. Scorpio is quite a deep sign. Pisces tends to want to transcend the human prison that is physicality and reality, and to connect with a source beyond the physical, to really affect others without actually interacting directly with them. So I know a lot of people who are Piscean, they're musicians or they're dancers, and they just want to connect with something beyond the physical, and really with musicians, playing music that can emotionally affect somebody, and you've never actually met that person, but their message connects with you, and it triggers something within you. So water signs generally are very focused on human values, and they want to be of service in some way to humanity or the human condition, and just care for others in some way, generally be there. Or if they can't care, or if they're not that focused on tending to others, it will be tending to the way of human beings, and maybe even connecting with that divine comedy that is life. They're generally quite empathic and sympathetic, and a lot of the time psychic in their ability to pick up on subtle nuances around them. So water signs tend to be quite psychic. They can follow their gut instinct and be quite good judge of situations when they're in tune with their gut reactions or gut instincts or their intuition, their inner teacher. They are more introverted and downbeat compared to the other zodiac signs, and they can be quite moody and have quite a changing nature, because water in itself is very changeable. It's very inconsistent in a way. There is consistency to water depending on where you're looking at it, but there's a kind of unpredictability, especially if you think of things like the ocean. It's just not something you can guess, you can kind of hypothesize, and the weather report can say, yes, well, there might be a storm. It looks like it'd be quite bad, but it could pass you by without actually going overhead. They're very concerned with emotional security, and they can be drawn into symbiotic relationships where there's a sense of dependency, which can kind of make it, you can get stuck in toxic situations because they become reliant on other people, and other people become reliant on them. Water, I kind of think of the yin-yang when I think about water, and it is this kind of flowing with these little dots in between, and you can almost think of the dot being yourself and the other dot being someone else, and they're kind of caught up in what you can provide for them and what they can provide for you. I know it's a symbol of peace, but it's a kind of symbol of cooperation and harmony in that sense. But actually I find the yin-yang can also describe, I just see that image when I think of symbiosis. So you might disagree, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Water can be very impressionable. Scorpio, not so much, but water signs, like I said, they can take on the form of whatever it is they are tending to at the time, their receptacle, their vessel. They can be quite vulnerable and quite secretive and very protective of others. I think all of the water signs can be like this. They can be extremely protective of other people and their loved ones. I think Cancer is much more protective over family, and Scorpio, yes, in a sense, protective over their loved ones as well. And Pisces, I get a sense of being protective over somebody that needs defending, so they can be kind of like rescuers in a sense of looking for generally being rescuers actually, with Pisces. So wanting to defend the victim, the underdog, that's what I'm looking for. Water can be very quick to react, it can be very responsive, and Scorpio can be adaptable. It can take a long time for Scorpio to be ready to melt, to be adaptable, but with Cancer and with Pisces, definitely very adaptable and very able to see where it's needed. And yes, they, like I said, they do take on the sign of the form of their vessel, and though it can be a good thing, their ability to adapt can draw people in a way that you can manipulate others. There's a lot of manipulation with water. So whether you have a lot of water or you are friends with somebody or know somebody who is very watery, there is a sense of manipulation that you'll recognise within them. But they can manipulate things around them, or they can be manipulative themselves. And yes, there's a sense of becoming dependent sometimes, possibly clingy, and they can be irrational too. So there might not be a lot of logic applied in certain situations because emotions run high. So generally they're more subjective than objective, the water signs. And they can be oversensitive, needy, and overly emotional as well. So if you're lacking in water, then you can struggle to process your emotions sometimes. And sometimes this can present as actually just having a lack of empathy. But actually more it's like not so much of a connection. So if you've got a planetary lack, it's almost like it's a little bit slower than the rest of the chart. So if you have planetary lack in water, you can be slower at accessing your emotional state, and there can be a bit of an instability in the release. So it can be that somebody struggles to connect with their emotions, and then suddenly one day the floodgates open and it just all comes pouring out. And what springs to mind to me is as well with this is like people that kind of don't understand the kind of emotional etiquette in relationships, like Chandler from Friends, when he'd had an argument with his girlfriend and he just really believed that the whole relationship was over, and actually it was just a little argument and it didn't need to end there. But for him, he was a bit out of touch with emotional situations and a little bit inexperienced emotionally in that realm. So basically I got loads of charts sent through to me. Loads of people sent me their chart information, and I got lots of watery people. So I've got Ali B, who sent me her chart, and Ali's in Canada and in Toronto, and she's got water, Pisces rising, and Scorpio moon, and Uranus up there as well, with her moon in Scorpio. And it's quite an interesting chart as well because she's also got Mars and Saturn in Cancer, so she's got points in all of the water signs, so like a nice big watery grand trine there. And Scorpio moon again is like kind of a bit more able to reserve their emotional displays. They try to. When they do really get triggered, then it can really be quite spectacular, but they're very good at kind of playing poker face, because they don't really want people to know about their emotions. They're very good at containing them, but when they do come out, oh boy. I'm speaking from experience because I have a Scorpio moon. And what have we got? Sammy here. Sammy is another one of my subscribers, and Sammy has got Pisces rising, Jupiter rising in Pisces, and Jupiter is a traditional ruler of Pisces. And what else? Oh, Pluto in Scorpio and Sun in Cancer. So another triple whammy water. So I'm not going to go into too much depth with each of your charts in this situation, because I've talked a lot about water signs, but you're probably going to identify with what I've said here. You do have other elements to your chart, but it's just interesting to connect with this. And Ava, who is a subscriber and client of mine, and Ava has got a stellium in Cancer. She has Venus, Sun, Mars and Mercury all in Cancer, and a Scorpio moon, super psychic Scorpio moon and Cancer stellium. And actually, to make up her third point as in water signs, her descendant is in Pisces as well. So she's probably likely to be mingling with a lot of Piscean types and very watery types herself. So that's an awful lot of water in her chart, and not a lot else actually. There's a lack of air, there's a lack of earth, and a lack of fire. There's so much water in your chart, Ava. She does have Virgo rising, so that does give her a nice little grounding in earth. But it's mutable earth, so it's not so fixed, not so stuck in one place. Now, two charts that came through on the same day, but slightly different timings, was Gauri in India, Faridabad, is that how you say it? Probably not. I'm sorry if I said that wrong. And also Emily Kay in Croydon. You were both born on the same day, but you were born in different places at different times, so you have different ascendants, and your moons are at slightly different degrees. Being born on the same day but at different times and in different places means that Gauri has moon in Aquarius and Emily has moon in Capricorn, late Capricorn and early Aquarius moon, but you have very similar things going on in the rest of your chart. So both of you have Sun, Uranus, Venus and Mercury in Scorpio. More Scorpio. Can you believe it? All these Scorpios coming along to join in with my podcast. Thank you so much for sharing with me, you guys. But yes, so Gary's got an extra airy element to the chart because she has a Gemini rising and an Aquarius moon, and Emily has Virgo rising and a Capricorn moon, so extra earthy. So these are going to be very different expressions, both born on the same day, but will definitely have very similar ways of processing their environment and going about, how they want to, what they're motivated towards and how they interact with their environment, because they have such a heavy water weighting in their chart as well. So that's good. I've got more people. You think I'm joking? So Carolina from Valencia, Venezuela, has got a Scorpio sun, and I talked about Carolina in when I was talking about fire, because Carolina has a fire stellium, but she has a watery sun. She has Scorpio sun, she has midheaven in Cancer, and she has Mars in Pisces. So even more. And Paula, you have got okay, so you don't have a sun in Scorpio, you have sun in Libra, but you have Pluto, Mercury and Saturn in water. So that's another stellium in water, but with a nice airy, logical sun who knows they shouldn't be holding on to things and knows that they could let things go, but actually they do still want to mull over and process things to great depth. So that is a lot. Oh, Angelique as well, my gosh, in Croydon. Sun in Pisces, Mercury in Pisces, Mars in Scorpio. So think about what I said about some of those other aspects of the water signs. So that's my subscribers, and we can look at your charts in greater detail. And if you want to have your chart looked at in greater detail on my podcast, please subscribe to my mailing list, and I will definitely have a little look at your chart and see if there's anything that we can bring you into an episode for. And just very quickly, I'm just going to have a quick look over some watery celebrities that I picked up for you. So my Cancerian celebrity, who I think epitomises Cancer so well, is Princess Diana. Diana, Princess of Wales. I'll put a link in the description for all of the celebrity charts that I'm putting up today. And Diana is Sun, Mercury in Cancer. So really talking and thinking about, the needs of others. And, she was the Princess of Hearts. She really swept the whole nation away with her compassion. And she's got Neptune in Scorpio, which is obviously quite a slow-moving planet, but it actually makes an aspect to her Sun and Mercury. So this is an extra, ultra compassionate and committed person who really cares about the welfare of others. And her Sun and Mercury are actually in the other person area of the chart, so focused on the care and needs of others. But she has an air moon as well, so she's very much caring about the community. And yeah, Diana's a great example of how water works, how the sun in Cancer works. And another person who's got Moon and Mars and Venus in Cancer is Keanu Reeves, and he also has that in a harmonious aspect to Neptune in Scorpio too, because he was born around a similar time to Princess Diana, a few years away from her. So yes, he's got two stelliums though. So in fact, everyone I've chosen practically has got two stelliums in their chart. My Scorpio that I've chosen, and I probably could have chosen other Scorpios, but actually I really wanted to. I've chosen Gordon Ramsay because he's scary, and he's kind of. He's great because he's a very Marmite character, isn't he? And he's very you either love him or you hate him. And he has got another stellium in his chart as well. He's got he's got Sun, Venus and Neptune in Scorpio. And he's got, I'm definitely going to talk about Gordon Ramsay at a later date on this podcast because I enjoy his TV shows. You're probably all going to tune out from this podcast now because you think I'm horrible. But no, I think he's such an amazing example of his chart. Like to watch him do what he does on TV, It's melodramatic, which water can be very melodramatic. And he does some very Scorpio things with restaurants. Goes in and he transforms them, and they're in crisis when he gets there. Scorpio is a very crisis orientated sign. So I just chose Gordon Ramsay. So if you want to go and have a look at him, it's very interesting. You know, you don't see much of an emotional display from Gordon, but on his TV shows, there's definitely a focus on emotion. You know, when he goes into the restaurants, families are kind of at war with each other or even falling apart. Relationships are in crisis. And he comes in and he almost like, it's all for TV, but there is a sense of he does it very quickly because he doesn't have much time to do it. But he gets in, he gets to the bottom of the issue almost immediately, sniffs out who's the real problem in the relationship, working relationship, or, the marriage partnership or whatever, and forces them to look at themselves and forces them to have very honest conversations. And, obviously this is all very much dramatised and made so that it can be on TV and be very exciting and full of drama and exciting enough to hold people's attention. But, he's incredibly successful at doing this. And it's not just about going in and dealing with the relationships. It's about, literally, coming in and... he provokes strong reactions in other people. He provokes a lot of emotional reactions in other people as well. He's a great Scorpio because he really lives up to that kind of scary Scorpio kind of image. And I know there's so many Scorpios listening to this podcast because obviously you've all sent your charts in, but it's not. I'm not saying we're all scary. But there's this real ability to connect and go deep. And with Gordon as well, we don't see his emotional side. He goes in as a professional. He deals with it all. He's like a steely, calm exterior. He does get passionate and he does shout and he does swear. But actually, he's very composed, really. So he's an interesting one to look at. And my Pisces that I chose is a mega Pisces, Kurt Cobain. And Kurt Cobain was the lead singer of Nirvana. I'm sure you're all aware, but if you're not, you need to check out Nirvana. You need to hear Nirvana. He's got Saturn, Venus, Mercury and Sun in Pisces, and he has Moon and Jupiter in Cancer and Mars and Neptune in Scorpio. That is one hell of a watery chart. And he's one hell of a watery person. His whole story is very tragic. It's really interesting, and just to hear his music, it affected people. It's there's something about water that kind of it can disappear overnight, or it can sort of stay for the long term. And I think that he managed to he's sort of saturated the kind of collective consciousness, and he's permeated and gone on and on and on with his his music. It's outlived kind of fashions, and he really impacted a whole sort of era. And there's a very tragic end to his story, but if you watch any documentaries about him, he sounded a very watery type, and he did get involved with some of the Neptunian aspects or the Piscean aspects of transcending reality by getting involved in drugs and drink. And, he did meet a very sad fate by the end of it all. But nonetheless, he's a very interesting Pisces. We will look at him later on. I'm definitely doing stelliums, and I'm definitely doing, focusing in on specific charts. So if you'd like to be on the podcast, all you have to do is to sign up to my mailing list, submit your chart details, and I will have a little look and see where you fit. And of course, subscribe, rate and review me on iTunes if you'd like a little shout out. And please share this with your friends if you think they'd like it too. And one final thing, I would absolutely love to know what you think about what I've said today about water signs. Do you know water signs, and do you agree? Or do you think that I was way off the mark and actually you've got a better idea of how water works in somebody's chart? I'd love to hear it. So please get in touch. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I will speak to you next time. Bye.